My name is Joy Panopio and I'm the Marketing Director for Perpetual Soccer Hospital. Today we are joined by our speaker, Dr. Ian Fruto Teodorico. Dr. Teodorico, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Good morning to everyone. Good morning, Joy.
Hi, Do.
For those of you who do not know who I am Dr. Ian Fruto Teodorico. I am a board-certified internist and allergist immunologist. I am a member of the Philippine Society of Allergy, Asthma and Immunology. Overall in the Philippines, there are about only 130 plus, and about 75% of the board-certified members of PSAAI are in the National Capital Region. Here in Cebu, there are 8 of us. 6 are pediatricians and 2 are internists. I'm the other one.
Okay. So we are very fortunate that you have joined us today, Dr. Teodorico. July 8 being the Philippine National Allergy Day. It's an annual event held to increase awareness and educate Filipinos on the growing problems of allergies among adults and children. So to start off, Doc, let us talk about what are the usual or the common allergies.
Okay. Allergy is actually a very broad field in clinical medicine. If you are very attentive to what's being broadcasted on TV and over radio, there has been a massive bombardment of antihistamines about the respiratory allergies. So there are so many kinds of allergies. Contrary to popular belief, allergies are not confined to involvement in the skin. We also have respiratory allergies. We have allergies to food, medications. We have allergies with gastrointestinal manifestations. And then of course, the popular one, which most people know, are the skin. But the top one allergy, which is actually the most common, is actually allergic rhinitis. There's even an advertisement on TV. I think I'm not allowed to mention the brand, no? But
Yes,
it's for the promotion of an oral antihistamine. It goes like this. Nagbabahin ka, sinisipon ka. Isang buwan na yan allergy na yan. So dapat uminom ka ng blah blah blah. No? So things have changed. We already have data showing that allergic rhinitis is now considered to be the epidemic of the new millennium. Here in the Philippines, there are surveys which show at least maybe a third or a fourth of the entire population is afflicted with it, regardless of whether it is mild, moderate, severe. And then of course, bronchial asthma. We have a lot of patients who are asthmatic.
I'm asthmatic.
Our hospital administrator is also asthmatic.
Yes, she is.
And then the common ones, food allergies, which is predominantly for the pediatric age group. Then we have those involving the skin, dermatitis. We have urticaria in Cebuano, popularly known as dupang or labha, lipagha, mapamapa, pantal.
That's a lot to take in.
And then we also have medication allergy. And then we have also hypersensitive reactions to environmental triggers, no? Insect bites, contact with caterpillar pheromones, or in the scenario of the beach when you get in contact with sea anemone, jellyfish. So there's actually
A lot. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Doc. Let us move forward and talk about what are the common triggers in, say, at home or even in the workplace, especially in the hospital.
So if we base it on the incidence, the most common allergies are the respiratory ones, no? Primarily allergic rhinitis. So if it's a respiratory allergy, the trigger is usually respiratory as well. I mean, taken in the respiratory system, it's an aerosol, something we inhale. For rhinitis, not a lot of people know this, but we all know that the nose serves as the main organ for olfactory sense, no? Our sense of smell. But what many lay people do not know, the nose acts as a filter. If you view the nose inside the nasal endoscope, you will see there gross hair.
Right.
We have mucus, you call it in Cebuano, sipon. And then we have microscopic hair and cilia. All of these 3 things serve as mechanical barriers meant to entrap debris. Because the air we breathe in will always carry with it microscopic debris, dust, viruses, bacteria. But you would wonder, if the air is that dirty or it carries a lot of things with it, why don't we get sick on a daily basis? Why don't we get pneumonia every day? Because the nose is a very efficient filter. They will never get to the lower respiratory tract. Now, if you are somebody with a hypersensitivity to a certain aerosol, something that you inhale, so you have allergic rhinitis, mucus production, which supposedly serves as a protective barrier meant to entrap debris, is way more than what is required. So there's a hypersecretion because of a hypersensitive state. So the mucus you produce initially, it flows forward. We all know that we term that in medicine as rhinorrhea, a watery nasal discharge, along with paroxysms of sneezing. And then some people will do the peculiar scratching of the nose. We call it allergic salute. Because of the itching of the nose, we do this, we do that. Or the Filipino variation, you use your cloth to do that, or a towel or a handkerchief. And then there's a nasoocular reflex. Once the nose starts to act up, your eyes will also tear up, you to get itchy, and then you do this. Now, if the allergic rhinitis is long-standing or if it becomes chronic, the sneezing will not be as prominent, the forward flow will not be there anymore. It will be replaced by nasal congestion and post-nasal dripping. When we say post-nasal dripping, the mucus you produce is no longer will no longer flow forward. It will flow posteriorly at the back. That's why it reaches your throat, it reaches your sinuses, the neighboring anatomic structures. You have the pharynx, larynx, you have the sinuses. That is why people with allergic rhinitis tend to have more cases of sinusitis, tonsillitis, pharyngitis. Unaddressed allergy will eventually pave the way for infection. So, since I mentioned earlier that it's a respiratory allergy and the trigger is an aerosol, so what are the common triggers in the home setting or in the workplace? People would say dust, no?
Right.
But actually data shows that we have to be more specific than that. It's actually the dust mite. Dermatophagoides terumisinus and Dermatophagoides farinae.
It's very technical.
Those are the scientific names of the dust mite. But for everybody's understanding, we'll just use the term house dust mite. No, that's actually the number one, the leading indoor trigger, whether you're at home or in the office. That's why for patients who have allergic rhinitis, allergic bronchitis, and bronchial asthma, apart from giving the nasal sprays, the oral antihistamines, the leukotriene receptor antagonist, that's only half of the battle if you give medications. We have to control the environment. We call this the allergen avoidance measures. So, allergy is a trigger-bound disease. Without the trigger, it will not flare up, it will not exacerbate. So in the home setting, we generally recommend patients with respiratory allergies to do a more frequent changing of pillowcases, bed sheets, blankets. Actually, if the house has curtains and carpets, we discourage them from having them. But if you do have them, frequent changing, frequent vacuuming. Why is that? Why not? Why do we recommend every 5 to 7 days? Now, why not every 2 weeks? Why not every month? Because as human beings, we shed off dead skin. The older you become, the more dead skin you shed off.
The older you become, that's okay.
You don't see it because the dead skin is microscopic. That's what the dust mite feeds on. No? So that's the reason why even if your pillow casing looks thick, it still looks clean. The blanket. Some people have, even at your age, security blankets and pillow. They don't subject it to the laundry because they love hugging it. They can't sleep without it. If you culture it, you're bound to find a lot of dust mites. That's why we discourage stuffed toys for those with allergies. Because every contact with them, you develop sensitivity. That's why many patients, they are symptomatic in the home setting. And when they leave the house, the symptoms will dissipate or will decrease. And then when they get home again, it's reactivated. Some people, when they wake up in the morning, the first thing that they do is sneeze. Or they blow off mucus which is clogging their nostrils. No? So, these are some measures which you can easily do at home to avoid exacerbations of our respiratory allergies. Another trigger is this one. Many people deny this. The presence of cockroach. No? Cockroach, and the cockroaches have been here for millions of years. They are very good survivors. They easily adapt to any environment. So when they pass away, in the Philippines we have two main species, Americana and Germanica, the black and the brown.
I didn't even know that. I just know that there's a cockroach that flies,
Yeah.
and then another one that really likes to crawl.
When they pass by, they leave behind microscopic appendages, droppings, pheromones. If you inhale these things, they trigger your respiratory allergies. That's why we discourage people from eating in their bedroom. Some people love to eat. It may not be a major meal. It can be snacks or chips or junk food.
Yeah.
There's bound to be food debris that will fall.
Right.
So if you don't clean up after eating, they're drawn to open source of food and water.
Yeah.
So even if you don't see them, if you put a CCTV camera on the floor at 2 or 3 a.m., they're running around sweeping the food debris. And when you wake up, they're not there.
Oh my.
So you don't need to see them that they're there, but they leave behind those triggers. So to avoid that, confine eating in the dining area. And if you insist on eating in your bedroom, clean up thoroughly.
Okay.
Some people get sensitized to pollen triggers and animal dander.
Okay.
We will know this by doing the allergen skin prick test. If you are sensitized to a particular pollen, and if it's in your backyard, in your garden, you have to remove it. If you're sensitized to a dog dander or a cat dander, the grade A recommendation is to remove the pet.
Aww.
But not all people get sensitized to animal dander, no? So let us not be too hasty to kick the dog out of the cat because sometimes they're not really the culprit.
Well, maybe the culprit is a human, not a pet. But yeah, that's a different topic.
If your trigger is a medication or a food and it's verified already by your attending specialist, it's very simple. You avoid the food. For example, I will make myself an example. I am allergic to crab meat. Unfortunately, I did not outgrow my allergies to crab. I can eat shrimp, I can eat lobster, but my allergy to crab has remained. In fact, my last reaction 4 years ago, 2018, was already anaphylactic. So, the best thing to do there is to avoid.
Right.
We will not die if you don't eat the things you're allergic to. There are so many other food options. No?
That's true.
For medications, for example, there are some of us who cannot tolerate NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen, difenamic, naproxen. So you have to have a list of these things and you avoid them. It's an inevitability for us to get sick. So whenever you meet up with a new doctor, you have to bring this up so that they will give you something else. No? For these patients, we jump to another analgesic with a different chemical structure, tramadol or extended release paracetamol.
Yeah. So what's important, audience, is you take a note of everything and anything that you can possibly remember what you are allergic to, and you be transparent to your physician about it also.
Because let me add to that, no? Allergy, for those of us with allergy recognizes things on a cellular level. The body does not get confused. So I would like to dispel a very common notion that still perpetuates up to this very day. Some people might be allergic to a particular thing, but when they eat chicken, egg, or the very common things that we have in the Filipino diet, they will make the error of misattribution with regard to the blame. So they will blame the chicken, they will blame the egg. Actually, there's no such thing, no? Your body will not get confused with the structure of the chicken and the structure of the, for example, you're allergic to ibuprofen. They're not the same. No, so it doesn't mean that if you are allergic to ibuprofen, if you eat chicken, it will get worse. On a molecular and on a cellular level, they're very different. Your body recognizes the epitope of the ibuprofen, not the chicken meat. So eating chicken will not make it worse. So I hope that practice stops. No, lay people tend to blame the common food because out of desperation, you want to blame something, and it's something that you see every day. Chicken or egg are the easiest to prepare viand. It's cheaper than beef. Beef
and pork,
fish and pork. No, so we are a Jollibee Manginasal country. Every corner there's a chicken barbecue stand. In the morning, we eat a lot of eggs. No? So it's very easy to make the error of misattribution. That's what we call scapegoating. Let us not make these things the scapegoat. Let us blame the trigger because allergy is trigger bound. You avoid the right trigger, you stop the disease.
Okay. And how about in the workplace, doctor? Like how about here in the hospital that we go
This-
to every single day?
The same measures in the home setting, the dust mite measures, the measures to counter cockroach, and the medications that I mentioned, if you're allergic to any of them, always keep them in mind. If you're a forgetful type of a person, I have several patients who do not bother to remember the names of their medications, so I advise them to keep a card or a bowler bag or a
Yes.
dog tag with their allergies. So
Right.
that if they cannot remember, at least they can look it up in the dog tag or in their card or in
Right.
the bowler bag.
That's true. That's true. So anyway, moving on as well, Doc. What are the expected? Because we are currently having vaccinations like in practically different parts of Cebu. So in the north, the south, and central Cebu. So the common fear nowadays is that what could they possibly experience when they get vaccinated? So what are the expected adverse reaction to the COVID-19 vaccine?
Okay, that's such a major issue these days, because everybody has access to social media, and then there are people who perpetuate fake news. There are people who promote fear mongering. But anyway, I will try my best to dispel that. The vaccines, particularly the COVID-19 vaccines, have a very similar profile to the vaccines that we are used to giving already.
Like flu.
Yeah, the flu vaccine, the
pneumococcal.
pneumococcal vaccine, or even some of the vaccines we received in our early childhood. Now, for the COVID-19 vaccines in particular, there are two main adverse reactions. Now, adverse reactions don't happen to all, but it can happen to a substantial proportion, about 20 to 30%. There are two main reactions. We call them the reactogenic side effects and allergy. Now, the more common one is your reactogenic side effects. What happens in the reactogenic side effects? After you receive the vaccine and it enters your body, our immune system has two main parts, the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system. The innate immune system is our built-in immune system. We were born with it. No? So the moment the vaccine enters the body, your innate immune system will recognize it as something other than self. It is foreign. So it will mount an immune response. So there are what we call cytokines. Cytokines are biochemical factors which promote the immune reaction. With a very brisk, healthy innate immune system, your body will release inflammatory cytokines. These are the ones responsible for the sensation of pain, swelling at the injection site, and if these inflammatory cytokines get into systemic circulation, you can manifest with fever, headache, muscle aches, myalgia, body malaise, mimicking a viral infection which is systemic. Now, fortunately, these reactogenic side effects are self-limiting. They happen usually in the first 3 days only. For most people, only within the first 24 hours. This isn't something we can easily remedy with rest, hydration, and if it's really painful and if there's really documented fever, we can take an over-the-counter paracetamol. So this is nothing to be afraid of.
Right.
No? Considering the benefit we get from vaccination, particularly for COVID-19. Now, the other side effect which most people are afraid of, which is what everybody is afraid of, allergy. Allergy is actually not very common for COVID-19 vaccines, and the serious one, which we label as anaphylactic, is actually considered rare. Now let me discuss more on that, no? So that people will understand. Allergy is a hyperreactive immune response to something that most people are not sensitized to. No? So in allergy, it could manifest as skin itching with rashes. Usually the rash for allergy is what we call urticaria. It looks like the rash when you get exposed to caterpillar pheromones or the mosquito bite. That's a typical example. There's a wheal and there's a flare.
Okay.
So it's
the
red.
redness that you...
Yeah, the redness, we call it erythema. And then there's a wheal formation, and then it can be big, it can be small, varying sizes, and it's evanescent. What does that mean? If it resolves, ninja vanish. It doesn't leave behind a trace, it disappears. It's what makes it different from dermatitis, because with dermatitis it can be a weeping lesion or a dry lesion. If it's weeping, the doctors will use the term eczema. But if it's dry, it can be hyperpigmented. The skin will crack. It will form a keratosis, no, a deep exfoliating layer of skin.
Right.
Now, for urticaria, which is the rash, cardinal rash in type 1 allergy, you don't expect those things, no? Now, with urticaria, you scratch, they increase in number, they're itchy, and some patients will even complain the sensation of warmth. So that is the rash expected for allergy. And apart from urticarial rash, others can have angioedema. Angioedema involves a deeper layer of the skin. It can manifest as swelling of the lips, swelling of the eyes. Sometimes it involves the hands and the feet. An uncommon site for angioedema is the laryngeal area. Should it happen there, it becomes an emergency. You have to be rushed to the ER because you will asphyxiate. So you need to be given the drug to reverse it, the injectable epinephrine. Or if it's really rapid, sometimes you have to do intubation.
But that's very rare, right?
That's very rare. We consider the allergic reaction to be mild if it's just up to the skin. But the moment it involves another organ system like your respiratory system or your cardiovascular system, that's already considered serious, and we will use the term anaphylaxis. So anaphylaxis is the worst possible scenario for a type 1 IgE-mediated allergy. What happens in anaphylaxis? Together with your rash, the itching, the redness, and the swelling, many patients will experience difficulty of breathing, wheezing, mimicking asthma, and there will be dizziness and hypotension. Some will have episodes of vomiting and LVN. So the presence of a rash and erythema and itching, partnered with any of those, we make the clinical diagnosis of anaphylaxis. Anaphylaxis usually happens in the first 15 to 30 minutes after giving the vaccine. It is rare generally, but should it happen, it usually happens within that span of time. But it can still happen in the next 6 hours, but for the current data shows that it happened in the first 30 minutes. That's why after receiving the COVID-19 vaccine, there's a mandatory, non-negotiable imposition. We have to make the recipient stay for at least 30 minutes to observe them. Then if that is uneventful, we send them home with the instruction to keep observing for the next 6 hours. No? Beyond that, it becomes very unlikely already. Now, if you incur a mild allergic reaction, we can easily remedy that with an oral antihistamine. But if you incur an anaphylactic reaction, the drug of choice will be the injectable epinephrine. At the vaccination centers, it's made available. We have a makeshift ER or an ER kit. Or if you are in a vaccination center right beside the hospital, they will bring you to the emergency room where you can be given the epinephrine.
Doctor, would it matter like the age of the person getting the vaccine?
What do you mean?
With regards to reactions to the vaccine.
Okay. Yeah, good that you mentioned it. No? For the reactogenic side effects, no, the fever, the headache, the pain at the post-injection site, we expect them in the younger individuals because the younger individuals have higher levels of interleukin-6, TNF. These are the inflammatory cytokines. The older you get, especially the senior ones, they will not manifest as much or even none at all for the reactogenic side effects because their stores for the inflammatory cytokines are not as much. Like I said, as we get older, there's more wear and tear expected for the innate immune system. Some would say that maybe the vaccine is not effective because I didn't manifest with any of those. To answer that, no, that's not true. That's only reflective of the innate immune system. The adaptive immune system, which is in charge of the antibody production, is intact even in the elderly. That's why we're able to give the flu vaccine and the pneumococcal vaccine even in the elderly age groups.
So, Dr. Federico, if I may ask, why is it that among all the vaccines that we've had or that we were allocated with in Cebu City, namely Sinovac, AstraZeneca, and Pfizer, how come it comes in 2 doses? Can't we just get one?
Okay, a very, very good question. No? I've been asked the same question several times by many of my patients. Why don't we just receive one vaccine? Because it's so hassle to line up, to schedule, and then you don't want to get exposed outside. Now, this requires an explanation in basic immunology. What happens in vaccination is what happens in a regular infection is what we are trying to mimic in vaccination without getting the disease or without getting sick. So there are two doses for the vaccination because first, both are essential. No, you cannot have just one or you. The first dose is essential because that is the priming dose. What do we mean by priming? Once the vaccine is inoculated in the body, your immune system acts on it, your body will develop what we call antibodies specific for that particular antigen. So with the coronavirus, all our vaccines are geared towards recognizing primarily the spike protein. Spike protein in the coronavirus is the main antigen which causes the disease and the virulence factor for coronavirus. So once our body gets exposed to gets the vaccine, our body starts making antibodies specific for that. Like I said earlier, our immune system works on a cellular level. So the antibody developed for that particular antigen, which is the spike protein or the other epitopes, if we use the whole dead virus vaccine, the antibody there recognizes that, it's like a Latin chemistry, recognizes that particular antigen. So it will not make a mistake of reacting to something else. Now, the priming dose, which is the first dose, you produce the antibody, no? Immune globulin G. The second dose is the boosting dose. We need the second dose because the antibodies you develop during the first dose may not be in the quantity sufficient to provide immunity. No? You have the antibody already, your body has produced the machinery to build it, but you need a secondary and a tertiary exposure to keep it going and to produce more. So it's a booster in essence. That's why we call it a booster. The same vaccine is given, but since your body will form what we call memory T cells. It memorizes things you have been sensitized to. So it will send a signal to your body, I know this antigen, I already have the armamentarium to deal with this. So once they get re-exposed upon the giving of the second dose, your body will build more antibodies directed against it.
Okay.
And it takes time. That's why you will notice that the vaccines are given 4 weeks apart. There's another vaccine at least 8 to 12 weeks apart. Your body takes time to build those immune cells, no, your antibodies.
Okay.
Now, once you receive the second dose, about 2 to 4 weeks after, there's already an exponential rise of the antibody titer. So hopefully, if you are already what we call fully immunized, it's one of two things will happen. Either you don't get sick, or if you do get sick, since you have a lot of antibodies against the coronavirus, you will have a milder form of the disease with a shorter clinical course. So in fact, so that will save you from morbidity. You will not hopefully reach anymore the more morbid intubated state. Those patients who reach the ICU are some of those who really die despite doing everything.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important, once it's available to you, get vaccinated. So the most important, or the whatever brand there is, the best vaccine would be the vaccine that's available to you. So anyhow, Dr. Rico, thank you very much for joining us today. Would you like to say a short message or parting message to our audience for the day?
Okay. Again, Joy, thank you for having me. And for our guests who are watching, I'd like to encourage everybody, actually I use the word implore everybody, if you haven't been vaccinated yet, please have yourself vaccinated once you are already in the priority listing. We're still following the DOH guideline for the priority listing. Once it's your turn, do get a schedule, have yourself vaccinated. We want to end this pandemic as soon as possible time. No? We have suffered so much, we've lost a lot of lives. And as a physician who personally handles COVID-19 cases, I've had my fair share of morbid and dead patients. I'd like an end to that.
Yes, please.
So vaccination is the way to go.
Thank you so much for joining us. Bye!